In this video, I'm walking you through the exact Figma workflow that we use to design emails that actually convert. We've worked with 40 plus brands in the past 4 years, generating over $52 million in revenue across email and SMS. And the thing that separates the brands doing 35 to 40% of the revenue through email is the way that the email is designed, structured, and built right before it even touches Klaviyo. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we do it. But before we get into Figma, there are 3 core principles that you need to know. Without these, the email will not convert no matter how good it looks. First is ease of click. Your CTA button needs to be high up, visible, above the fold, making sure that it's visible the second someone opens an email. If they have to scroll to find it, they won't click it. Second is skimmability. Nobody is reading your whole email word for word. Your design needs to communicate the offer in a glance through short headlines, infographics, and callouts. Third is fluidity. Blocky emails kill the scroll. Your sections need to flow into each other so the reader keeps scrolling without them even noticing. Keep these 3 in mind for everything I'm going to show you in this video. So the main thing that I want to touch on is you should never really start from a blank page. There's millions of emails out there, and it's always best to actually get some inspiration from the ones who are already being sent by big brands or that already hit those 3 pillars that we already spoke about at the beginning of the video. So for that, I recommend going on to reallygoodemails.com. For example, this one. This one's a sick email. Or just go directly on to mild.com and just so you get an idea, this one here. This is almost a perfect email, right? It's missing another CTA here in the middle, but there's so much inspiration that you can get. For example, even this one here with the waxed canvas cap, right? So the hero section could be a bit better, but it has a good CTA up here. Text, call outs, another CTA, related products, love by. So this is kind of like social proof footer. And then you have call text, email, lifelong guarantee. It basically has all of the elements that would make this email high converting. So you could just take a look at what these top brands are doing structurally, where they have their CTAs, how long it is, how much text a block like this actually has. Obviously you can put as much as you want or as little as you want, as long as it is visually cohesive across your email. And with these 2 in mind, let's just start making this email. So I'm going to use this one that I made yesterday. Funny story. I recorded this video for about 45 minutes and then I saw that it didn't hit record. That was not my proudest moment, but here we are again. Let's do it. What I recommend is that we do 1200 pixels width. This is how we usually work in most emails. Sometimes you can do 600. The only issue is it's going to look amazing on Figma, but then it's going to look blurry when you upload it into Klaviyo. So you can start at 1200. Ideally, you just pull this bad boy down like this, and then obviously just adjust the dimensions the way that you want it to go. You can make it as long as you want. Obviously I'm going to make it a tiny bit different than this. So the first thing that we tend to do is we tend to get a top bar with the logo. Now this top bar is really versatile because you can do a lot more stuff than just the logo on it. You can do a shipping bar, you can do an announcement, you can do a sale, whatever you want. But before we get into these little details, what I want you to do, and this is why we're working side by side with the email that we did yesterday, just so you get an idea on how you need to start. So the best way to do it, just label it. A good naming convention is going to save you a lot of headache in the future. And then you're going to do, for example, let's just take this off. I don't need it. Do this. Lay it in. I will most likely do it a tiny bit bigger than the last one, so I'll probably do 150. That should be fine for us. And just so you get a better idea on how to lay everything out, there's a tool over here called Layout Guide. So you could just do grid 50 pixels, sure, but then you're basically doing graphic design for ants. So ideally you do 50, and then you just basically get your inspo from here. So this was one of the images that I really liked. And just so you get an idea, this is one of the brands that I liked the most when I was a kid. I remember when I got my first Globe wallet that my parents bought for me. It was like one of those Velcro ones, annoying. I don't think I've replaced that one for, I think 4 or 5 years, ever since I was about 11 or something like that, or 12. So once we have this bad boy in, obviously let's lay it all out. Maybe we can make it a tiny bit smaller, and then we can just make sure that it aligns with, your grid, obviously. Then since you have so much in terms of empty space, you can overlay this, do it here, and then you can just create a little gradient that goes just like this, like that, and this stop should be at 100. And now we can take off this and we can give it a bit of room. This should be enough for a nice little blend. Great, that's perfect. Now, ideally, the things that you want to have inside of this email should be your hero image, your offer, compelling CTA, blocks of copy, any other sections that you might find beneficial, and then product sections, footer, whatever you want. Ideally, if you're just getting started, the best thing is just go and try and do an outline for how you think the email should look visually, right? So you'd probably put a text block here, you'd probably put a CTA here, probably put a section here that you want, and then you would go and do a product section here at the bottom together with the footer. So just make sure that you have these in place before you do anything else, just because it's going to allow you to see the almost end result of the email before you even place pictures, copy, or headline. Now, very important, the hero section is basically the first thing that people see as soon as they open the email. Most people are not going to get to the second scroll, the third, or even to the bottom, so you need to make sure your image is compelling. Now, in terms of this text, since we already have it done over here, I'm just going to copy this over. It's relatively easy to make something like this. Let's just make sure that it's fully aligned. We could probably make this one a tiny bit bigger, couldn't we? Right, so I've used an external background remover tool just so that I have a little skate over here. And what we're going to do is just make sure that it aligns. So we're going to do middle opacity for him, and then just make sure that we're lining him up as we go. Something like this. Obviously he's a bit smaller. It's pretty much on point. This looks nice. Brings a bit of intrigue to the CTA. And obviously for the top bar, before I forget, just put your logo, any relevant shipping information if you need to do so, and then I'll just do it as a normal white background. Obviously I would align this to the middle. Now in terms of the copy, obviously I can dive right in, but ideally I'd save a video on how to actually do copywriting that converts for e-commerce emails for another one. Otherwise, I would spill all of the sauce in one. And it's not that I don't want to, but it might just be quite a lot to digest all at once. So ideally, you put the text that you want in here. But one thing that you really need to take into account is that after you're done with the hero image, you need to give people a reason to scroll down. Whether that is very shocking, curiosity-inducing, line of copy, a headline, or some bits of design like this. Just for example, I can't really go all edgy with a brand like this, especially Globe, since it's recognized. Obviously skaters love to be the rebels, but that's why we're keeping this copy short, just so that there's an easier transition visually onto this section. I'm going to show you exactly how to make this. And one thing that a lot of people tend to get wrong, they tend to put new in, sale, men, women, support. They put all of the nav links here at the top, and I do recommend that you skip those because it just distracts attention, right? Every email should just have one big idea, one CTA, and if you stick to that, that rule is golden and it will help you out in the future. So this is how we do it. And obviously another headline, we can just put this one in here, line it up like that. And then this skateboard, I used it simply because it looks phenomenal. I need to overlay it top of the wheel. Great, this is how we have it. Just as a little side note, whenever you feel like you need to convey the information inside of, you know, another big copy block, here's all the info, here's all the text you need, make sure find a way to do so that isn't going to be, you know, visually boring. So if there's a way that you can do something like this, like for example, what if instead of this specific color, we actually use the gradients that we have going throughout this text? So we could just do something like this, top, maybe we can rotate this, and then let's do this one at the bottom. Great, this is not bad, but right now I'd probably have to add a bit of a drop shadow under the wheel, just make sure that it's convenient. So I'll probably just revert this change. But yeah, if you think that you need a big copy block, usually you could just do with a visual element that's going to help. So that can be an us versus them, infographic, callouts, as you can see this email specifically, the cap with callouts towards the product, and then you can do other things too. Like everyone loves these transitions because it makes the email seamless. If your email is blocky, you're done for. So just remember these simple things, right? And also remember, whenever you are doing an email like this, always imagine how long it would take to scroll. So every single scroll you want to have a CTA present, otherwise people won't really know where to click. 90% of the time you might think that they know, but they won't. That's why you need to make everything as easy as possible in terms of UX and UI. And then what we're going to need for the bottom, and I'm just going to get right into that. By the way, before we get into the product section and building this email inside of Klaviyo, if you're a brand owner doing 7 to 9 figures a year and you want to know exactly where you're leaking email and SMS revenue, just book your free audit below through the first link in the description. Now let's get back into it. For products, ideally you can put whatever you want in terms of your store, but since this is a skateboard brand, obviously here we'd probably put skateboards and shoes. This is how the product would look, you might have to do a little border just to make sure that it looks nice. Right, it's a bit more visible now. I just feel like I wasn't really seeing this, but now everything's clear. And one thing that you need to realize, obviously make these align, because if they're not aligned, if they're out of whack like this, it's going to be hard for you to build them inside of Klaviyo. Klaviyo is really cool with accommodating, you know, for example, splits, 3-piece columns, 4 pieces, or even uneven splits, like for example, something like this. But if you do super wonky diagonal, it's not going to be able to pick it up as well. So for the product section, just make sure that the products are visible, highlighted. Every single product should have its own CTA. Otherwise, people won't really know how to click. And this is something that I want to drill. Make sure that you have as many visible CTAs as possible. And I don't mean as many CTAs, aka different ones. Just make sure that they're relevant to what you're pushing. And the footer should be, you know, the same one across every send. So you could basically do a universal section, just reuse it across your emails, and you should be good to go. Now, obviously you need to add some secondary navigation here, which is going to be pretty simple. Shop all, review support, plus socials. You can add links to your specific collections if that is the case. Now, just to finish this off, since we have an offer, I think it would be pretty important to just remind them of the offer here at the bottom. So we will bring this one up, and I will most likely align it with the products instead of the product blocks or something like this. Great, that's perfect. And then you put the footer and you should be good to go. Now what we have to do is take off the layout guide just so we can see how we did on this email. It's pretty nice. This is a footer that we reused from another brand. The concept is the same across all of them, right? And I can show you a few more here. Secondary navigation plus USPs. Same thing here. Same thing here. We don't need USPs on this one. Every brand prefers something different. And then over time with testing, you end up getting to the variation that performs the best. So once you have this here, you will just lock this email, start slicing it by section, right? So you're going to do a slice for the top bar, you're going to do a slice for the hero. Obviously just make sure it's aligned. We will most likely do a slice for this. For the products, this one is easy. You're just going to get it to 600, and then you're going to clone this one, do it like this. Make sure nothing's out of bounds. Very perfect. Take off this slice, pull it down here, and then we should be good to go. And then for the text blocks, depending on your deliverability, just use text blocks if needed. For most of emails we recommended. Some we could just do fully image based, but these are clients that we've been working with for 4 or 5 years, and we know that every time we hit send we get 55-60% open rates on emails, and at that point the audience is already so warm that we don't necessarily have to switch the structure of the email just to get, you know, 1% higher in deliverability when we're already hitting top tier. Now what you're going to do is, once you have these slices locked and loaded, you're going to select all of them, export them, and then you're going to either use a third-party tool like Tiny JPEG, or just compress them directly into Klaviyo so that the image actually loads faster when it's inside of the inbox. And then one more thing that I wanted to highlight is you need to add alt text to every single image, right? So for this one, when you upload it inside of Klaviyo, you just put something like skater riding across pavement. Then you would put skateboard, right? Because we want to steer away from alt text, which references the offer or the sale, because at that point it's going to buff up the text content and include a lot of promotional keywords, spam words. I know that this is also anecdotal, so take it pretty nuanced, let's say, but if I can steer clear and away from it, then I'll probably do so. Plus, I do know that this might sound like jargon, but as we build this channel up, you're going to start understanding every single little term till you become the best email marketer yourself for your ecom brand, or you just get the pros like us to do it for you. So now you have the full design process that we use across all of our clients at Cobalt Club. But here's one thing I want you to internalize. Design is just one piece of the puzzle. The brands that we're working with that are hitting 40% plus of the revenue coming through emails and SMS have everything else dialed into: the flows, the segmentation, the pop-up, the strategy behind every single send. And most Klaviyo accounts that we go through transparently are missing a big chunk of that, which means there's a huge potential just sitting there untouched. So if you want to know exactly where that is, book your free audit through the first link in the description. We will go through your full Klaviyo setup, find where the money is leaking, and give you a roadmap on how to fix it. So that's it for today's video, and see you in the next one.